The carnivore diet can sometimes be incredibly challenging. Maybe you don't have as much energy as you would like. Perhaps the weight isn't coming down as you expected, or you're just struggling to stay on track, whether it's due to sugar cravings or social pressure. I know this because I too experienced it. But everything changed when I learned these 4 key lessons that not only solved all of my struggles, but made it incredibly easy to stick to and succeed. And that's exactly what I'll be sharing in today's video. The first lesson I learned was the perfect amount of fat. When I first started carnivore, I just finished a bulk, which is essentially where you eat as much as you can in order to gain as much muscle as possible. So consequentially, I was rather fat. So in order to get lean, I thought, you know what, let's just cut the fat right back. Let's eat a lot less than I probably should. At the start, everything went well. I already had a lot of my own fat to draw from, so I didn't really notice too much. However, as I started to get lean, I just started to feel terrible. I had low energy, I had headaches, my head sort of had this sensation where it felt like it was compressed. As a whole, I just felt terrible. But as soon as I increased the amount of fat I was consuming, I started feeling incredible again. You see, the thing is, most people are scared of fat. Their entire life it's been villainized. They've been told it's bad. The mainstream narrative is that all of these modern diseases are not caused by the chemicals in our food, they're not caused by the seed oils, but somehow they're caused by the one food we've always eaten, in red meat. Now, as absurd as this is, because it's hardwired into everyone's psyche, they're so scared of it. Another reason as well, fat sounds a lot like fat. So when people eat fat, it makes them think that they're going to get fat. Fat is not something you want to fear. We need fats. Our brains are quite literally comprised of the same fats that we get from meat. They are also what build our hormones. Because on carnivore we're not consuming carbohydrates, they're also our fuel source. If you aren't consuming enough fat on carnivore, like I was, you're going to run into some serious problems. But exactly how much is the right amount? I think a great place to start is a 1-to-1 ratio. 1 gram of fat for 1 gram of protein. Now, in terms of how much you should be eating person to person, I think a great thing to do is to work out exactly what your goal weight is. And whatever your goal weight is, have 1 gram of protein and 1 gram of fat to match that. So if your goal weight's 170 pounds, have 170 grams of protein and 170 grams of fat. In doing so, it'll still mean you can achieve all of your goals, but you'll avoid feeling terrible. What some people will do when they hear this 1-to-1 ratio is they'll eat 100 grams of muscle meat to 100 grams of fat. But what you need to remember is that in 100 grams of muscle meat, there are 20 grams of protein, and in 100 grams of fat, there are 100 grams of fat. So in order to hit this 1-to-1 ratio, you want 500 grams of muscle meat to 100 grams of fat. On screen now are some steaks that roughly represent this 1-to-1 ratio. So look to buy steaks that look something a little bit similar to this. However, this isn't a set number. If you're someone who's super active, maybe you will need a bit more than this. But as a good general rule, to feel your best, this is a great place to start. The next lesson I learned was this concept called temporary discipline, which in my opinion is one of the most underrated concepts when it comes to the carnivore diet. I, like nearly every other person, was addicted to junk food. In fact, in my first 6 months on carnivore, every second weekend I'd eat something else. I was so poor with staying on track that I don't even count those days as part of me being on carnivore. The thing is, it would happen so effortlessly too. I'd have some social event on, would go out, everyone else is eating other stuff, so I'd just think, oh, you know what, I'll have this one thing. But the problem is that these food companies design these foods in a way where it's very hard just to have one thing. So when I'd slip off, I'd have one thing and I'd go, oh, you know what, one more thing and I'll get back on track tomorrow. And then if it happened on a Friday or a Saturday, I'll go, you know what, one more day of not eating clean, then starting next week, I'm completely back on track. And this is what happens to so many people on carnivore. You get stuck in this vicious cycle and you think to yourself, how on earth am I going to eat only meat and eggs for the rest of my life? However, now I stay completely strict. That other stuff doesn't even tempt me. I cannot remember the last time that I ate some processed food. But what always makes me laugh is that people think that I'm super disciplined because I did this, when in reality I just completely changed my reward pathways. Now I was able to do this through mastering temporary discipline. Here's how that works. The human psyche is wired in a way where we're constantly trying to seek pleasure or avoid pain. Now, unfortunately, I'm not the only person in the world who knows this. The food companies, they also know this. So they manufacture their foods in a way that gives your brain just so much pleasure. They target what is known as the bliss point, which essentially is the perfect combination of sugar, salt, and fat. And when they hit this bliss point and add heaps of other chemicals that also enhance the flavor, it just gives your brain so much pleasure. It releases a lot of a hormone known as dopamine. Now, because this dopamine release is so extravagant, it tricks everyone into wanting to eat it. This is why 90% of people are addicted to food. The human brain knows that it can both seek pleasure and avoid pain very quickly and easy by having it. But there's good news. When you stop consuming this stuff for 2 weeks, your brain completely forgets how much pleasure it got from it. and it no longer craves it. And what happens after a couple of weeks on carnivore is that everything starts to change. For those who have weight to lose, you start to lose a lot of weight. Your energy is very stable and consistent. You don't have these mood fluctuations all day because of the carbohydrates causing blood sugar crashes. You're just in a better mood in general. And so after these 2 weeks, your brain can't remember how much pleasure it got from this other food, but what it can remember is the feeling you had this morning when you stepped on the scales and the weight was down. It can remember how energized you feel. It can remember how your overall mood's better. And all of a sudden, this food just seems so unappealing to you. But to make matters even better, your taste buds also start to change. If you stick to carnivore for 30 days, your taste buds will change drastically. Your favorite foods now, in 30 days' time, they taste ridiculously sweet, they taste chemically. There used to be this one energy drink that I would drink every single day on the way to the gym. I absolutely loved it. It was the highlight of my day. Now, after a few months of being strict on carnivore, and I'd heard people saying these things about how your taste buds change, I thought, you know what, try it. There's no way my beloved drink tastes terrible. And when I tasted it, I couldn't believe it. It literally tasted like chemicals. I had to throw the thing out. Doing carnivore at the start can be daunting to so many people because they say to themselves, I'm never going to eat any of these foods again. Now, objectively, these things taste good. So at the start, this feels like a tremendous sacrifice. You'd expect that it takes a tremendous amount of discipline to stay on track. However, because your reward pathways change, because your taste buds change, all you have to do is master temporary discipline. After 30 days of carnivore, you will no longer want that stuff. You start to feel so good, and even when you do eat it, it just tastes terrible. If you can get through 30 days, you're going to be well on track. The third thing that made carnivore easy is I understood what actually made you lose weight on carnivore. Like I said earlier, when I first started carnivore, one of my main objectives was to lose weight. And like most people, I fully believed in the calorie equation. I mean, on the surface, it makes perfect sense. Fat is simply stored energy. If we consume more energy than we burn, this excess energy is stored as fat. But what I didn't understand is how much hormones actually have an effect on this equation. Now, as a result of this belief, I still counted my calories when I first started carnivore. I thought, well, carnivore is going to make me healthy, but I need to track every little thing in order to lose weight, because that is exactly what I've done in the past. But as I heard more and more stories from people in the carnivore community, like you guys, who would say, I've been on carnivore for this long, I'm eating more calories than ever, and still losing weight, I began to question this. When it comes to fat loss, there's two sides to the equation. Like I talked about, fat is just simply stored energy. So technically speaking, if we can consume less energy and burn more energy, we will lose weight. But carnivore massively affects both sides of this equation. Let's first look at how carnivore affects metabolism and the amount of energy you're burning. On a traditional diet, every single cell in your body is just decimated. They're riddled with inflammation from the inflammatory foods. And because our cells are what produce energy, as a result of this inflammation, they're not very effective in doing so. This is why the average person just has no energy with everything they do. They speak with low energy, they walk with low energy, they're just low energy individuals. But what happens on carnivore is these cells heal and they start to produce a lot more energy. This is very tangible, you can feel it. I know for one, when I first started carnivore, I within weeks felt like a new person. I went from being someone who had to hit every single alarm to get up in the morning to someone who would wake up before my alarm. It makes a night and day difference. Now, this may not seem like it would affect fat loss, but it really does. One of the key ways humans burn energy is through something known as NEAT, which stands for non-exercise activity thermogenesis. This is all the little movements throughout the day. Are you talking with your hands more? Because you have more energy, you decide to do some gardening. You start fidgeting more. Now, this can have a massive impact. In some studies, they've found that this could differ between 2,000 calories per day, individual to individual. Now, not only does carnivore speed up your metabolism, but it also down-regulates your appetite. For one, you become something known as fat adapted. Now, to put this very simply, when you're on a high carbohydrate diet, your body runs on carbohydrates. Now, when you've run out of these carbohydrates you've eaten, it's not very effective at tapping into its own body fat, as they have very different structures. We've all felt this on any other diet we've done in our lives. When you start restricting portion sizes in order to lose weight and you still have lots of carbs in your diet, you feel terrible. This is why you see all these bodybuilders just absolutely suffering to get lean. However, on carnivore, because we're eating fats, when you've run out of the fats you've consumed, your body's very effective at tapping into its own body fat because they have similar structures. This is one of the key reasons people on carnivore never get hungry, as well as the fact that carbohydrates also give us massive blood sugar spikes. So then another hormone called insulin elevates to bring this blood sugar back down. The problem with this is that insulin actually blocks another hormone called leptin, which is responsible for saying to your brain, hey, we're full, we can stop eating now. So what I quickly realized, and what lots of other people realize, is that on carnivore, there's no need to track every single little calorie. When you eat like a human's meant to in the proper human diet, you look exactly how a human's meant to look. Now I will say, at the end of the day, energy balance still does matter. You do lose fat because you burn more energy than you consume. But when both of these things are completely optimized, you're a fat burning machine who never gets hungry and makes things incredibly easy. On carnivore, you don't need to starve yourself. You don't need to track every little thing. You can eat when you're hungry till you're completely full. However, there is an important distinction. Eat when you're hungry till you're full, not when you're bored till you're full. I've seen that stall many people's weight loss. They hear they can eat all they want on carnivore, and whilst for some people it may be true, but to those who just genetically have larger appetites or you're genetically predisposed to being someone who eats when they're bored, it's not always the case. So eat when you're hungry till you're full and the weight will fly off. The fourth lesson I learned is to have someone to do it with. Like I said at the start, when I first started carnivore, I kept slipping off. Along with temporary discipline, another thing that really helped out was having someone to do it with. When I decided to get serious with carnivore and commit to 50 days strict, I did it along with my best mate. A reason why this really helps is that the people around us have so much influence on us without even knowing it. The habits and the behaviors they have rub onto us so much, to the point you start taking on their vocabulary. I'm sure you know what I mean. I'm sure you have this one friend who randomly starts saying some weird word, and every time they'd say it, you get annoyed. But then 2 weeks later, somehow you were saying the same word. Or maybe you've noticed when you spend more time with your friends who go to the gym frequently, you start going to the gym more frequently. The same applies to carnivore. When everyone around you's eating other foods, well, they try to call it food. In reality, it's a bunch of chemicals grouped together, designed to taste good, put into a packet, and sold to you as food. But I guess technically speaking, it's food. But when everyone else around you's acting this way, and you're not, can make you feel almost different and isolated. The reason we're like this is it's hardwired into our psyche. It's only in modern time that we can be outcast from our group and be okay. In the past, if our tribe did not like us and we were outcast, it was a death sentence. You had to fight the lions, you had to fight the tigers all by yourself. This is why the feeling of being different or rejected is so painful to people. But if you have just one person doing it with you, you no longer have the sense of feeling outcast, and it can really help. Now, if you don't have someone to do it with in person, there are so many great communities online. By getting just one person you know to do it with, whether you know them in real life or you meet them through one of these communities, can have a massive impact on how well you stick to carnivore. Hopefully me sharing my lessons prevents many of you from making the same mistakes that I did. One other thing that can cause many people problems on carnivore is coffee. So if you're still drinking coffee on carnivore and you want to know if you're one of these people who is having their results affected by it, you can watch this video. See you next time.